Hey guys, Mike from Effortless Kinetics with this dude. This video is a video response to a question Preston on his show asked him. I think the question was like, what the consequences of somebody who grew up being beaten viciously or something along those lines, right? Or
Correct. It was more a continuation of like what trauma was and then how we redefined trauma from the classical sense from that definition to meaning just non-acknowledgement and how that would happen or how that would take place and affect someone with a more or less still grounded background. And then he asked, well, what about what we classically understand as trauma? And I said, well, this is kind of where my understanding gets a little hazy.
Sure.
And I think someone like you would be a better person to
Sure.
talk about the psychology of those kinds of things.
Yeah. Okay. And now that we're diving into this, I sort of just want to be clear that I'm not a licensed mental health professional. My understanding of this comes from a couple of textbooks in neuroscience, cognitive psychology, memory science, and psychoanalysis, both classical and contemporary, in a couple of contemporary theories and theoretical models, right? And it's my crystallization of all of this stuff that gives rise to what we're going to be talking about, right? So anyways, so I think it'd be useful to contextualize a little bit in terms of what normative an optimal development process would be, because like some people will say, oh, there's no such thing. I'm like, though rare, the species, the organism, still has a genetically desired optimal developmental process, right? I think because a lot of people are like, oh, everybody's fucked up somehow. Though true, that does not mean now that that's okay. Yeah, because
Right.
like
Speaking about like normalized behavior versus normal behavior,
right,
in terms
right.
of like something as simple and as concrete for the strength coaches out there, or even the athletes, is extension is the mechanism by which everyone manages everything.
Sure.
The reasons why we're not going to go into,
Yeah.
but then it's that versus being able to stack efficiently against gravity.
Absolutely, 100%, right? Like what's common and what is optimal, not the same thing, right? So when we use the word normal, because normal really is just, if you look up dictionary definition, normal just means what is most common or what is the average, right? In this case, when we say normative developmental process, we're talking about what is normal with respect to evolution, all of evolution. So, right?
Pretty big contextual lens.
Right. So the bullshit that you see in like, most of upbringing, most of child rearing process that's in modern day, dude, compared to 7 million years, that's not even this amount of time. Okay. So anyways, all right. So
It's gonna be good.
yeah, this is gonna be fun. All right. So let's dive into the development of the unconscious, right? So it's it's really this that the trauma affects, right? So it, I think I've said this before in I think our first episode, like in the actual interview, whereby we're sort of contextualizing the relationship between the conscious and the subconscious, right? In that the conscious is not the center of your mind, far from it. It's the conscious is actually like a vehicle for communication, for articulation, right? And for manipulation of unconscious content when it is brought up. Okay, so for this chunk of what I'm about to talk about, most of it comes from this. Most of it comes from this book called Faces in the Cloud, and is written by Stollerow and Atwood. The first edition is 1979, second edition 1994, I believe. So anyways, right, this is a foundational textbook on this subject called intersubjective psychoanalysis. Right? Essentially, it is a masterclass in the development of personality, the self, and the unconscious with this lens. So anyways, so when the infant first gets introduced to this familial unit, parents and the infant, because the infant has no language, it has no means to actively communicate. At first, it has no way of understanding because it still has a brain.
Right.
Therefore, it has a mind.
Right.
This mind may be empty, but it has a mind. Things need to be filled in there.
Right.
So yeah, what are you saying?
I just want to point it out because I know for us this makes complete sense. But one of the things to bear in mind, I think, is that when we have babies, when we have small children, and you're definitely going to talk about this in a second, and you have parents that treat these infants, these children, like full-grown adults, you have to understand the context that they don't have the wealth of experience that adults do.
Sure.
So, like, I think that's really the point that you're trying to illustrate right now is that their minds are empty in that they don't have sufficient experiences. So they're lacking in context for pretty much anything that you're going to be talking to them before and even after they start to develop speech.
For sure, 100%. And like, anybody who's recently had kids and can relate to this. Like we know a couple of people that recently had kids, right? It's like it very much is like that in that they're like puppies in the beginning, right? They're even more blank than puppies, I think, because like puppies like pretty much come out with behavioral programming, like human infants do not, right? So anyways, right, so when you have no way of one establishing models, working models, or what we call prediction models. So let's talk about this, right? So prediction models is a phrase that we borrowed from motor control research, motor control literature, and cognitive psychologists may call it internal working models. Psychoanalysts also call it internal models. Right? So they're all the same thing. It's just a predictive sequence of causality structured in the mind that tells you when X happens, what else is going to happen, right? What leads into whatever. So anyways, so infants at this stage have no prediction models for anything. They have no idea what's going to happen, right? They have no idea what's going to happen. One of the things is because they have no mental apparatus, they have no mental structure to chronicle time.
Okay.
Right. So anything that happens is both eternity and a instant, both at the same time. Yeah, like their shit doesn't make sense, right? If you look at it from an adult standpoint. Right. Right. It's very difficult to relate to an infant.
I'm sorry for pulling this out of left field, but this is almost, this makes me remember something I read about cats and their ability to consider spatial awareness. Like if they go, like let's say there's like 3 different doors to get into the kitchen, and like one has just a longer path and one you can cut right through. The cat will go in through the closest door and observe that there's no food in the bowl, but the cat doesn't know that if it takes the other route around to this other kitchen, it thinks it's a separate kitchen. For spatial analysis.
Well, that's pretty cool.
I'm not sure where I read that. I read that very, very recently. It's why that's like the thing pops out. But I think that might be the closest thing that we have to relate with other experiences. Because we'll see animals do things that we think, why are you doing that? That doesn't make any sense. But we actually have that behavior within human beings as well.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. That's really cool. Of course, you talk about cats. So anyways. All right, so in the beginning, all of these experiences that the infant has, that he or she, let's just say he, not being sexist, mostly because later I'm going to reference the mother, and he, she is just a very convenient identifier, okay? So anyways, I'm not discounting the possibility of female babies, okay? So anyways, all right, so our protagonist, the infant, is a he. So he has no way of articulating this. Whatever he is experiencing, he can't articulate this, right? And in the first couple of months, he quickly gains the ability to move, right? Meaning to establish sensory motor symbols. Okay. The purpose of symbols with this context is to share experiences. Okay. Right, because if you touch somebody, you immediately share.
Right. Yeah. Right. So it's not in terms of verbal relating and share the way we think of as adults. It's very much interaction.
Absolutely. Exactly. Right. That's the first layer of sharing. Okay. Right. It's a very rudimentary layer of sharing, but still, it is shareable. Right. It is shareable. So, until then, though, the first category, and I'm gonna do this with like spaces, okay? The first category of the unconscious, or the first region of the unconscious that Stolleroy and Atwood had laid out in this book, Faces in the Cloud, and really all of their other books, is this thing called the dynamic unconscious, okay? By definition, the dynamic unconscious holds all the experiences that must not be allowed to be articulated. I'll come back to this in a second. This is going to be absolutely crucial to why we're really here, having this discussion, meaning the verbal and physical abuse, okay? So dynamic unconscious, again, is what is not allowed to be articulated, okay? What is not allowed to be shared with another human being, okay? So as you develop sensory motor symbols, meaning movement, meaning touch, meaning physical interaction, things are available to be articulated. So then a second category of the unconscious, second region of the unconscious gets constructed, lack of a better term. Not suggesting that the mind does little, origami projects or whatever, and then create things, right? But this is now filled, right? This is arisen, okay? So, and this is called a pre-reflective unconscious, okay? And pre-reflective, I think the etymology of it comes from just the fact that like it's right before content and experience goes into the conscious and subsequently articulated, okay? Right, that this loop is very crucial for a multidisciplinary understanding of what the hell's going on, what we're actually talking about, okay? So, so the more this could be articulated, meaning the unconscious content, the more they could be articulated, the more you can experience yourself, right? Because like the more you can experience your history, the more your mind can introspect, right? Because if you're locked meaning your experiences are locked in dynamic, meaning not allowed to be articulated, well then you won't access it either. Right. So here's an example, right? Let's say you're a little kid, maybe first grade, second grade, elementary school. You have or whatever grade that you start having a reading project, and then you're gonna like make classroom presentations. So you stand in front of class, and you're about to tell everybody about whatever it is that you're about to say. Some asshole in the front row shoots a spitball at you, hits your face. You get horribly humiliated. And you start crying, everybody starts laughing, and it's a terrible, terrible predicament to be in for a little kid, or really for anybody for that matter. Imagine, like you're doing a presentation as a fucking professional, as an adult, and somebody does something, whatever that may be, makes you cry, like just straight out cry, and then everybody like reacts. Yeah, that's pretty traumatic, right? So anyways, right, so that happens, right? And then everybody's laughing at you, and you're crying your eyes out, right? And then later you go home, and then we'll set up a scenario after that, right? So in that moment, or rather, leading up to that moment, meaning when you're still talking before the shot gets fired, you are expressing yourself, right? You are expressing yourself. There's a whole lot of stuff in the pre-reflective that is going through the conscious and being spoken. Okay, right. So there are thoughts, there are retrieval cues. If we use memory science vernacular, there's a lot of retrieval cues that's set up by yourself that pulls content out of the pre-reflective unconscious to be verbalized, right, to be communicated, to be used as symbols, verbal symbols, and somatosensory symbols. Because obviously, like for most people, nobody talks like this without moving their body. Hell, even when I'm trying to do this, I'm moving my head. Right? So anyways, so kids are definitely gonna be verbal, animated somehow when they talk. Right? So for those of you guys that are more familiar with memory science and cognitive psychology, this, meaning the pre-reflective unconscious, would be episodic memory and semantic memory, like either way, long-term memory being retrieved out into working memory, i.e. the conscious, and then through through sensory memory, that's when it gets shitted out like into communication. So anyways, right? So that's what's happening before the spitball happens, right? The moment that the spitball hits the kid's face, it shuts all of this down, right? It shuts all of this down because it's a very powerful agent or driver to negate the significance and the validity of your experience. And since in this moment your self is connected and projecting and producing content and producing symbolization for a shared experience between you and everybody else in the room, that message says, stop doing that. That's not good. That's no good. Stop doing that. You're not allowed to do that anymore. Mostly because when that happens, you will successfully stop, right? And then you know, subsequently you start crying, and then everybody start laughing at you. You are definitely not going to want to express yourself. Go.
So the question I have now is that the experience of the spitball hitting in your face, is it because there's obviously going to be a delay between when that hits generally, because again, a classroom setting from what I can remember so many years ago is like something happens, there's dead silence, and it's either going to be people will laugh, or in some instances they'll be like, why did you do that? That was terrible. You're a horrible person.
Sure.
In that moment between the actual reaction, that's when the shutdown is happening.
Yes.
Like before even the reaction, even if that shutdown between experience occurring, and reaction of the rest of the community, if that's shortened incredibly, that's still happening during this. Okay.
Correct.
In terms of a sequence of events.
Yes. Okay. Like cool. That's when you're like, first of all, I'm not allowed to do this anymore. Somebody disagrees. Again,
right, because it was the impact or whatever the hell it was. Let's say spitball in this instance that initiated and triggered the stopping of this flow. Correct. Because it's not what was expected.
Correct. Okay. Because you wouldn't expect that.
Right.
Because you are talking, right? Your default assumption, again, all of this, we're going to come back to the trauma thing. It's going to be super crucial to understand how trauma impacts just life and experience. So anyways, right? So when you're communicating, when you're symbolizing, you're going to expect resonance.
Okay.
Right? Exactly. Because symbols only have purpose when ideas and feelings and experiences are being shared. That's the only reason why we have symbols, right? So that when you're symbolizing, you expect some kind of feedback that tells you this is being shared.
But in terms of being shared, received, and acknowledged by the
other party.
Okay.
Right? And so, and again, it's like when you're public speaking, you can kind of tell by everybody's faces whether or not they're responding. Right? And if they are, and you see nodding heads, or you see like attention, right? Then you know, all right, cool, like this is happening. We're sharing. We're sharing experience. Right? So in the moment of stop, this division between dynamic and pre-reflective unconscious happens.
Okay.
Like that experience in that moment, that experience is being chopped up.
Okay.
A massive part of it goes to dynamic, and then a very small part of it, fragmented, goes into pre-reflective.
Okay.
Right. The only stuff that really goes in pre-reflective is that I'm not good enough, and I'm not allowed to do this. Right. And then because to consider other things would be too scary. And plus, if you're like single-digit age, you have no context for this. Right. You have no models for this. You have no working model for this. Right. So then, all the scarier things, meaning the actual emotions, sadness, fear, aggression, unfairness, all these things get locked into a dynamic. Because the only thing you can process will be in pre-reflective. And in that case, it would just be, I'm not good enough, and I need to shut up, and things like that. Right. So that's how this is all sort of divided.
Okay.
And then once that happens, we now have a third category, I keep saying category, third region of the unconscious, which is called unvalidated unconscious. Okay, unvalidated is simply things that are not being articulated, right? Left unarticulated. That's part of the experience, but not necessarily forced to not articulate. See, the stuff in the dynamic is the parts of the experience that somebody has told you to not articulate. Unvalidated unconscious is stuff that is part of the experience, the same experience that just didn't get the chance to be articulated, but yet still a part of the experience.
To clarify a little bit, because I know we kind of played with this over at lunch.
Yeah.
In the first region, this would be something akin to anger or sadness or some of these things that are from this rejection of your peers. So it's like the stuff that like you want to express, but given the context situation, like you know that you're already embarrassed. Maybe crying would be another manifestation of this of that region. You're like, oh, well, that's just gonna make it worse, so you don't. And then with this third region of the subconscious that you're referring to, it's almost kind of like you feel a certain type of way, but you don't know, you don't have words to express it, or it's something that you don't recognize in and of itself.
You don't recognize.
Right. Like that's an important part of this third region.
You don't know that it's there.
Oh, so you might not even have any feeling towards it.
Yeah.
Like it'll just be there, and you're not registering it. Period.
Yeah. You won't know that it's there.
That's a very key distinction.
You don't know that this exists.
Then that's a very key distinction, and that clears it up a little bit more.
Actually, yeah. Let me clear all contextualize the rest of it through that lens, right? So you don't know all three of these are things that you don't know about. The stuff that is in the pre-reflective is going towards the conscious. Until it reaches the conscious, you don't know that that's there either.
I think that was a very key distinction.
I agree.
Yeah. When we were having this discussion at lunch with Brandon, like for some reason I felt that this was I know we were referring to the subconscious, but a part of me still felt this was dividing it between conscious and unconscious. Still,
it's very common
because we're not even talking about conscious thought, like the idea of somebody saying like these generic recommendations of buck up or just take it in stride or think positive or any of this other horse shit that gets thrown around because you're still addressing very topical things.
Yeah, very skin level things.
Yeah, you're not even addressing anything that has any real significance.
No, not even a little bit. Not even, I can't emphasize that enough. Not even a little bit.
Right.
Like, it's really hilarious. We had a good laugh about it. Like, it's really fucking hilarious. It's like, no, you're not even a little bit. It's like like our industry uses a leaking roof as an example, right? Yeah. Like your roof's leaking, and so you're if you are not actually trying to solve the problem, you put a bucket underneath, and then or you patch the roof, right? And then it will just leak someplace else.
Right.
There's a pipe in there that's carrying water that you need to go address, right? So that would be like the unconscious. That would be one of these three, and really all of these three, right? And so trying to address the problem in the conscious, honestly, wouldn't even be patching the roof. It would just be putting a bucket underneath.
Right.
That would, in my opinion, would be the equivalent of like, suck it up, or
think positive thoughts,
some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
We're not even. Yeah. Anyways, right. So pre-reflective, you still don't know this. It's just that the unconscious is sending this into the conscious. Okay, the unconscious is sending this into the conscious.
Got it.
And then the dynamic, that actually takes work to bring into the pre-reflective.
Okay.
The unvalidated, it does not take work. You just gotta open this up, feel it, and it will come up. It will come into pre-reflective.
Open what up?
The experience.
And how would one open that up?
So yeah.
So, we can't
we
can't just leave them hanging. Yeah.
Right. So this is a little bit more like actual like therapy, right? This is actual therapy. So I learned about this through my own experience from a excellent world-class therapist, and these two textbooks on psychoanalysis. One is called the Introduction to Contemporary Psychoanalysis. And the other one is called Structures of Subjectivity. Structures of Subjectivity is also written by Stallero and Adler. For those of you that's brave enough to dive into this, good luck.
And can I just co-sign? She's amazing.
Like, just people like that don't really exist. Okay.
No.
Anyways, and you can like DM us or whatever to find out who she is if you want to. All right. So, anyways, so how to dive into this, right?
Yeah.
First, you need affirmation. You need validation. You need to feel that somebody is mirroring you. The other person is holding this, meaning your experiences, holding, right? Then what that does in memory science language is that it retrieves your sense of self.
Okay.
And again, in intersubjective vernacular, the other person, in this case, either a therapist or a friend or a lover, just another human being.
Right.
Another human being who is either deliberately or accidentally doing this. Either way, this is being done. They are serving as your self-object. What a self-object is a object, meaning a human being here. I'm not talking about object, this, right? Just anything that the subject's mind perceives is a object. In this case, another human being. That you can gain a sense of self from. Because I'm responding to you, right? Whatever you do, I'm oscillating with you. So from that, and I'm confirming and affirming your experiences.
So it's a very specific thing that you're describing right now, because we say these things, and I think we both have reference because of the psychoanalyst and your foray into the great unknown. Literally. But for other people, I think we have to contextualize this a little bit more.
Sure.
Because what you just said for me is a very specific thing.
Yeah.
I know when you're saying it, you are referring to a very specific thing. But to the sound, to the ears of a lot of people that haven't explored, done internal work, or read about these kinds of things, i.e. pursued psychoanalysis as a major study in their lives, it just sounds like you need a confidant or a friend or a buddy to do these things.
I can see that.
And I think that maybe expanding...
It's not exactly the same thing, yeah.
Yeah.
It does overlap. What I'm talking about, what he just said, it does overlap. And again, guys, like if you follow my channel, you know by now that like,
good luck.
I kind of don't remember what it's like to like not know some of this weird science shit. So this is very helpful. So this context is very helpful, right? Gotcha. So anyways, yeah, 100%, right? Like we're talking about. So example of that would be like, all right, Joe. After this, I have a really tough client. This person has some terminal disease. I mean, the conversation, I would actually say the terminal disease. Let's say this person had Parkinson's. He's been with me for a while, and you know, like it's getting worse and worse, and I'm like really scared. Right? So if he says nothing, right, then that's easy to contextualize. If he says nothing, right, then that will be a negating of my experiences. That would be the opposite of affirmation. Right? You're not saying it's real, right? But because like consciously, that's fine, right? Because I know that's real, right? To my unconscious, that we just lost a opportunity to connect, right? We just lost a opportunity to connect.
Pay attention.
Yeah.
Because a lot of you do this, and you're not even aware of it. This isn't a reprimanding tone. It's just when something happens and you don't know how to respond and you shut up, or you actually shut down. Like these are mechanisms, and I don't want to like step into this waters, but these are mechanisms that will prevent you from being able to relate, from being able to provide the other person with that acknowledgement, with that affirmation. Yeah. Right. So it's these things that we're trying to figure out how to do. Is like, oh, maybe I'm not a people person, or I don't know what to say, or I don't know. Like these are actual skills. These are actual skills where there is a gradient. It's not just about like this is how this person relates to people. No. There is a hard definition for how to relate, there's a hard definition for being able to acknowledge and give the other person what they need in the context of sharing, given how we defined that in the very beginning of this video. So it's like we're talking about very specific things because the way that it's verbalized in other contexts with people that don't have this background, they don't really know what they're describing. They are trying to describe this mechanism, but they don't have the tools, the background, the experience with which to do it. And I think it's a very, very important thing to distinguish because it's kind of like saying in our field, someone went to physical therapy. Oh, physical therapy doesn't work. These exercises don't work. And it's like, well, what was the problem they were trying to solve? Mm-hmm. They were trying to just throw stuff at the situation like the glorified rotator cuff exercises. When you and I and some of our audience now understands the relationship between the four joints that are going on within the shoulder complex. Like it's much deeper than that, and it requires much greater defined constraints. All right, this is not to like shit on anybody, but it's like there comes a time when we really have to be very specific as to what we're discussing, what we're talking about. Absolutely. Otherwise, we're kind of just hand waving it and then flat Earth.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, absolutely. Right. It's been unintentionally myopic.
Right.
It's been unintentionally myopic.
Right.
So, anyways, right. So going back to like that discussion, right? So I've just shared and symbolized a experience. Right, my experience of contemplating or going into this really demanding, emotionally heavy session, where I'm responsible for a portion of this person's well-being, and then sharing that responsibility with the person themselves, right? So I'm looking for validation, right? I'm looking for sharing. I'm trying to share this, right? Because for me to experience this, to experience the taking on of this responsibility, I will have to go blow past the fear of the idea, right? Even just thinking about this is scary, right? And to share, this is why talking helps, because it allows you to share the experience with another human being, right? So if you don't say anything, you're not sharing.
Right.
It will be worse than if I hadn't said anything to anybody, right? Because it will still be like how real that experience is, meaning experience of contemplating going into the session, how real that is would be as is. Meaning it will be however real it was in my mind before I said it. But once I said it, there's an opportunity to make it more real, there's an opportunity to make it less real. So if I hadn't said anything, it would just be however real it was, meaning I would have otherwise been able to experience that experience however much I previously had. Once I verbalized it and you don't say anything, now I'm less able to dive into that experience. I'm less able to experience that experience because another human being didn't respond to it. So when you don't respond to it, then the thing is not real. Because we've all seen movies and TV shows and stuff like that where a bunch of characters will troll someone and pretend they're not there. Whenever they say anything, just right? Yeah, right. By contrast, if you had said, "Oh my God, that's terrible," or "Holy shit, how are you doing with this?" Like that reifies the experience. Now the experience is shared, therefore real. Right? It's shared, therefore real. Right? So that's an example of like how this will be experienced, right? Meaning when you make it real, now your reification of it, your validation of it, allows me to put the whole experience of contemplating for this session, put it into pre-reflective and shove it into conscious and be feeling this. Like it allows me to retrieve this, all of it, into my working memory. So now I can experience it. Right? For you memory science nerds, you only really exist in your working memory, right? Like your long-term memory, all of it, all multiple categories of it, portions of it. You don't experience that. You don't live there. You live here in working memory, right? So anyways, that's why like I'm using this space of the screen as conscious and working memory, and I'm using this space as long-term memory and the unconscious. Right? They are the same thing. So, anyways, right? So when you acknowledge it and you validate that, I really didn't have to, my unconscious, not me, my unconscious,
right,
didn't really have to put anything in dynamic. It could all just go into pre-reflective. If you didn't say anything, then most of it will go to dynamic, some of it will go to unvalidated, and nothing but apprehension and inadequacy and just perhaps a little shame or whatever will go into pre-reflective. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. Like, again, this happens so that the conscious won't have to experience this.
Oh shit. Okay.
Which is what really makes it nefarious.
Ooh.
Yeah, because you can sustain this kind of abuse. This is 100% abuse,
Jesus.
emotional abuse. It's a little bit of abuse, but it's abuse nevertheless. It's like being stabbed by a needle. Is it a big deal? Are you going to die tomorrow? No, but do that every day. Exactly. It's the equivalent of this, except this adds up. The needle thing, you probably just scab over. But anyways, but yeah, right. So that's an example. That's a real world kind of example of this, right? And at a moderate level,
yeah,
right. The damage of that, is directly correlated with how much content gets stored or compartmentalized into dynamic. Right. Again, you are fragmenting experience.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That has a lot more context for me now. Okay.
Right. This is some powerful shit. This is some powerful shit. Right. So anyways, so now you can't experience. Yeah, this has an implication to our actual question, right? So when you get beaten, it's the same thing, but way more powerfully. So here's the thing, right? Remember in the beginning I was talking about symbols has kind of two classes of symbol, right? Sensory motor symbols and verbal symbols. Verbal symbols being more sophisticated and therefore more able to retrieve experience, right? Sensory motor is not as sophisticated, but is more foundational, right? This is the building block, really the building block of your reality, of your self-experience. Yeah, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I see where this is going.
This is some, this
Jesus
is some powerful.
Christ.
Yeah. Yeah, this is some powerful shit, right?
Damn.
Yeah. So, so in that kid's example of like humiliation in the classroom, that's just verbal. Well, I mean, there's a spitball, but that's not much of a physical component to it, right?
Right. It's like
It's a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Right? Because most of the damage is in the crying and the laughing. Right.
So it's mostly in the sounds.
Right. It's verbal. It's mostly verbal.
Yep.
Right. It's verbal. So in beating, is that plus sensory motor. So you psychologically get destroyed thoroughly. Meaning, your subjective experience of reality gets just shut down, and all of it gets shoved into dynamic unconscious. And there's very little of you left. There's very little of your experience that is left in pre-reflective. More of it goes into dynamic. Yeah. So if this happened developmentally, it has multiple implications. One, yourself, right? The structure of yourself doesn't get to develop. Somebody define that, right? Yeah. This is serious, right? So, right, because if this is allowed to happen, meaning when I say this, I don't mean the beating. I mean like just normative development, right? If this is allowed to happen, then everything, your whole experience, all the time that passes from your perspective, is coherent, and there's a trajectory, right? And you can access it wherever you want. All of it comes together to form the foundation and organization of yourself.
Could this be, and I'm just kind of rephrasing it, because you are not fragmenting?
Correct. Because your experience is not fragmented. Most of it is here. There's a tiny little bit of it that's here, or there's less of it that's here. right? In dynamic, most of it is in pre-reflective,
Got it.
right? It's not locked up anymore,
Right.
right? Therefore, you know, if you're 20 years old, you have 20 years worth of content in pre-reflective.
Oh my God.
Yeah, exactly. So then, right, and because it's full experiences, you can think through it. Things have meaning. Things have more meaning. You can extract more meaning out of things. Now here's the kicker. This also means you will have more practice in contextualizing meaningful things. And you have more practice in the manipulation of meaningful things in the working memory / conscious. You just have more experience working with meaning.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Right? So you have more experience understanding yourself. You both have more of yourself to understand. You have more experience understanding the self that you have.
So it would be safe to say for that individual, they could actually stand to benefit from logically processing out issues that they encounter moving forward in their lives,
Right.
because they are not as fragmented, because it's not like those are the few and rare people that would be able to logic their way out of problems.
Yeah.
More often than not.
Yeah, because the unconscious part is healthy. It would have no problem organizing what it knows to feed into here where the logic is being produced.
Got it.
But yeah, where the logical work is being produced. Right? These two work together. Right? In
Okay.
cognitive psychology, that there's this concept of the two-track mind.
Mm.
There's the conscious and the unconscious. They experience things together.
Okay.
It's just that, in my opinion, the cognitive psychology doesn't dive into the actual relationship between the two as well.
Mm.
Anyways, so when physical violence is there, like more of it is locked up, right? So then this means the stuff in dynamic and the stuff in unvalidated doesn't exist to the conscious.
The stuff that goes there doesn't exist because because it
Right. Yeah.
okay got
Right.
it.
Because you
Sorry.
never see it.
Right.
Because you never ever see it. There's no way for this stuff to get brought into this what I'm calling right now in this episode the central channel.
Got
Because
it.
no shit, right? I'm making this into a channel. This line right here in the space is the gateway, right?
Yeah.
Between long-term memory / the unconscious and working memory / the conscious, right? This is the gateway, right? Right. So meaning this is the episodic buffer in memory talk, right? So anyways, right? So just to reiterate, the pre-reflective is all the stuff that could go into the conscious whenever retrieval cues are there.
Mm.
This stuff has no retrieval cue, and it has retrieval cues, but when the retrieval cue is present, it actively gets blocked.
Okay.
Right? I think this is denial. This is denial. Actively denial. Because you must not let that shit come out. You must not let this come out to the channel.
Jesus.
Yeah. So when you're beaten, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of denial. You won't even know it because it's so thorough. That's all you know. There's less contrast between this channel and this channel because you just don't experience it. Right? Yeah. And like, so one reason, for my selfish reason, one of my selfish reasons for talking about this is, well, I was one such kid. I was beaten for like anything I did, and some of the things I didn't do for the first 12 years of my life. And then after that, went to school where I was further beaten by kids much older than me. So this is something very familiar to me, and because of that, like I don't get as strong of a reaction to it because I don't know what I'm missing. Right? Because you know what would be missing here, right? It's like
I can't describe to you what I would be missing, but I can feel the pieces of me that wouldn't be there.
No. I mean, like, when I say that, I mean, like, you had the experience of loving parents.
Right.
I don't know what that's like.
Right.
I don't know what I'm missing out on. So it ain't that bad. You
Yes.
know full well what you're what
Yeah.
I would be missing out on.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm missing. I don't.
Right. Like I can't even imagine
Right.
that experience. I can't even imagine that reality. I
Exactly.
can't.
Exactly. And just like that, the inverse of that will be true for me, meaning I can't imagine what it's like to have that.
Right.
Right. So anyways. Right. So when this happens, your reality is very warped. So over here in the central channel, in a upbringing like this, you get this principle, working principle, built into your unconscious that tells you you're never good enough, your wishes are not real, and by default nobody cares about your wishes. Here's how that principle gets constructed. Because most of the times when kids get beat is because they want to do something and then the parents didn't want that. And the kids keep wanting it. And the only way the parents can communicate that is through violence. Because most of the time, yelling predates that immediately. Meaning, they yell at you a couple times, you don't listen, you get hit.
Or they yell at you as they're
Well, I mean, it's both. It'll be both.
Right.
But yeah, but either way, it's a matter of control. They're trying to control you, which means they're trying to psychologically destroy you.
Because control is not sharing, it's not acknowledging.
Exactly, control is not sharing. Control is not sharing. If you had the control, then you're not sharing. Yeah, like this is heavy. This is heavy for most people. Yeah, right. So if that's repeated constantly, meaning if I want to buy things for my friends, if I want to eat later, if I want to stay up, those are all my wishes, right? Those are all my objectives for experience.
Right.
And when that happens, I get horribly beat.
Right.
Now, my experience of that, yeah, so a lot of stuff would be locked in there. Most of the experience will be locked in because especially at a younger age, most of the experience are just emotions, right? Joy, sadness, that drives you. I mean, even as an adult, that drives you. So that gets locked in there, right? So a big part of it is the satisfaction. Meaning, let's say, like, I want to buy everybody expensive dinner. Everybody I know, expensive dinner, right? And I do that and get my ass beat, right? I do that and get my ass beat. Like a similar thing happened to me as a kid, right? But anyways, so I do that and I get horribly beat, so much that I can barely walk, right? Like, yeah, just picture that as an 8-year-old, maybe younger, maybe even younger, still, yeah.
Like, just for context for my face, like, I can cortextually envision that.
Yeah.
But like, there's a part of me that doesn't want to.
Yeah, because it's going there.
Yeah.
Yeah, 'cause it's going there. It's going to
it's a real visceral reaction. Like, it's a very nasty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, even hearing about this should be traumatizing.
Yeah.
Right. To people who are relatively well adjusted will be very traumatizing. Right. Yeah. So it's your experience of hearing about this, of following my thought experiment, is already being fragmented. A lot of it goes in a dynamic, like, and some of it is being articulated, right? So anyways, right, so if that would have happened, the fear, the anxiety, the sadness, the shame, the guilt, all of that goes in here, goes in the dynamic, right? And then just self-inadequacy gets articulated. That's the only way. Now, the satisfaction the person would otherwise get in sharing something like that would be unvalidated. Okay, all right. So Yeah, so the stuff that goes into unvalidated would be she just never got never was never allowed to be brought into fruition. Right? But if you were to access this eventually, it wouldn't take very much work. To access this, however, you're gonna cry, you're gonna be very painful, da 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 da. And you will need somebody there with you to validating this the whole time. Right? That's why therapy is the way they are. Yeah, exactly. Once I understood this, once I started learning about this, it made a lot more sense why our therapist is the way she is. Right? She's in therapy with us. Right. But and it's why it feels so right. Right. Yeah, it's because of this. Right. Like she needs to create this space so that this could be happen. But yeah, so this then means the majority of the content that you can access is very fragmented and it's only negative. Right?
That you can access.
Yes. Right. It's mostly negative. So then there's no meat to it because most of the meat is here and here. And because of the trauma, you can't access this. Therefore, you can't troubleshoot, you can't logic, you can't, right, exactly, you can't problem solve. More importantly, you can't internally represent people. Because normally, if this wasn't traumatized, right, then all these traumatic experiences will be replaced with empathic experiences. Right? Yeah.
So if you've never...
Yeah. Right, so meaning if I did that, meaning I just spent all this money, somebody's money, buying my friend's expensive nice dinner, and my parents weren't incompetent emotionally, they would be like, oh, that's just a great thing you do for your friends, da 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 da, that's wonderful, love you, all this other stuff. Then that would have built a internal representation of people who is loving, who is validating, who da 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 da. Now I have internal representation of people in there. Right? So then I can work with this, I can understand this, I have now opportunity to practice understanding, relating. Jesus. But because all I know, the most intimate thing I know is pain and violence and oppression and physical oppression. Well, I can't represent that in there. Right. Except I can. And then that becomes the working principle for when I meet new people. The other thing is, you don't know this. Again, I gotta reiterate, this is in the unconscious. Right. All you will know is, man, why is everybody an asshole? You're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid, you're stupid. Right. You don't know this. You don't know any of this. It's just this thing that drives you. And then, if you're lucky, every now and then you'll be frustrated. Well, why is this happening? Yeah. Fuck is right. But yeah. Right, so that's some of the consequences, right? So from a movement standpoint, that means you cannot feel yourself because you never have practice or the context to construct a model of reality where introspection is even a good idea. Holy shit. Yeah, because introspection belongs here. If you have retrieval cues for introspection, that shit will be blocked the fuck out. That's why a lot of these people can't feel things, right? Because Preston's example is like people can't feel things, right?
Right. And I kind of just said this knowing that there was like a mountain of things that would address that actual statement.
Yeah, and that's why these retrieval cues are blocked. Jesus. It's better than it's. This would be better, right? If they had no retrieval cues, because this stuff you had no retrieval cues. Like I couldn't sense happiness. I couldn't feel happiness until like recently. No shit. 30 years of my life, not feeling happiness. The best I got was not being debilitatingly like oppressed. That's the best I got. Yeah, happiness is a very foreign thing for people that grew up this way. Yeah, let us think here for a little bit, audience. Like happiness is a foreign, weird thing. Happiness is like anal sex the first time. Weird. And foreign, yeah. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah,
It was excellent. You just brought us. You just snapped us back.
Yeah, we're back in reality.
Right
yeah,
back
like,
in reality. I was like, holy
yeah,
shit.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
Fuck, dude. That's
That-
wow.
Yeah, that's why they can sense things, and that's why it's hard for you to like coach them, because problem solving is also foreign. Because problem solving change needs to be led by safety. This goes back to attachment theory.
So, what you just said,
Uh-huh.
if I can,
Yeah.
is it has to be led by safety,
Yes.
meaning that it has to be that individual has to be met by someone that has this stuff internalized. Maybe not like as like
Yeah.
psychoanalysts, but they have to have come to terms
Absolutely.
with a lot of this stuff.
Absolutely. Because this resonance is unconscious, meaning you don't know that you're giving it to the other person, and they don't know that they're receiving it from you. Yeah.
Like there are other statements that come after what I just said,
Uh-huh.
but I don't. Yeah, like that.
Yeah. So for these people who were traumatized in this way, safety was never defined. Safety, the concept of safety, the principle of safety never entered this motherfucker.
Right.
The closest thing will be them abusing somebody else. That's the closest thing.
Because it's familiar.
Correct.
It's something they recognize.
Correct.
Jesus Christ.
They know what it's like to be abused. And in that situation, the only person that seems to be safe is the motherfucker doing the abusing. So that's their definition of safety.
Jesus.
Yeah. Again, like this is their reality.
Right.
Reality is by default shared. Right? Like, so this mutually influencing field that is created when two individuals communicate, that is the foundation, not the precipice, but the foundation of reality. So however that is constructed in a developmentally formative time, that becomes your very reality. So back to the coaching, these people, they don't have the reality installed in there for this kind of work.
Right.
At least at the onset.
Right.
Right? So they need Ghostbusters. And I ain't talking about the glasses or teeth kind. I'm talking about like the mental health kind.
Right.
And it better be a bad motherfucker too. Like you know what I'm saying? Like if
Because if you get somebody that doesn't know what the hell they're doing or hasn't done this kind of work and they're trying to lead you through it,
right,
then it's just going to reinforce
correct,
everything else, and you're
correct.
actually going to be worse for it.
That's exactly right. You're gonna be further along that dysfunctional, fragmented reality. Yeah. But yeah. Alright guys, that's all from us today.
Wow.
Have a nice day.